Today we are going to be talking about the most basic of all strokes, but it's also the most important since it's the foundation for all of your lettering. My name is Amanda Arneill and I teach lettering tutorials and art here on YouTube and with full online courses on my own platform, amandaarneill.com. Now, these basic strokes, like I said, are so important because they are the foundation of everything that you're going to be creating. And there are three things you want to keep in mind: size, speed, and stability. Those three things all work together to get you the smoothest, most beautiful basic strokes. And when I say basic, I mean basic. We are taking it right back and doing straight strokes today. These strokes can be practiced with any brush marker, so grab one and let's dive in. The first thing that you want to think of when you are doing your line is the size. If you're holding your pen correctly, and I have an entire video about that you can watch right here, is that you want to make sure you have your pen hold correct to the side of where you're writing. Now this has a big impact on size because if your hand is down below and you're putting full pressure on your pen, it doesn't matter how much pressure you're putting on there, you're not going to get those beautiful, nice, fat downstrokes, because your downstroke is your very first stroke where you are putting all the pressure on the pen, pulling down, getting a consistent width all the way down your pen with a straight base and a straight top. If you have an angle like this, you know that your pen is being held down below your line. It's going to be angled and it's not going to be nearly as juicy and fat as it should be. So make sure your hand is to the side, press down on your pen, and pull straight down. The next thing to think about is the speed. How quickly are you going when you are pulling that pen down? If you're going fast, you might be able to get this stroke, but that's pretty much going to be the only one. And you're not actually creating a stroke with control. Instead, you want to ground your hand on your paper, press at the top, pull it all the way down nice and slowly, and lift at the bottom. Every single stroke that you do should be intentional, with purpose, with slow speeds. Think about this as a time for you to just sit back, relax a little bit, do something somewhat repetitive, and enjoy the process. The last key is stability. Now, that means something different for pretty much every single stroke. For your downstroke though, that means that you are stabilizing your hand against the page. Don't hold your hand up and think that you're going to get a nice consistent downstroke. You need to have that stability of your hand on the page, pressing down and helping to keep your strokes in line. Now, stability for an upstroke means something different. Let's look at the size, speed, and stability that you need for your upstroke. An upstroke is done when you barely put the pen on the paper, and instead of coming down the page towards your belly button, you're going to push up the page and away from you. Now, this one is definitely trickier than the downstroke because you have to have light pressure on your pen, but it's not as light as you might think. And that's the first thing that we will talk about in size. How thick should your upstroke be? Now, if you were to take your pen and look at it, it has a very teeny tiny tip. So you could hold your pen like this and try to do the thinnest of all possible lines. But that just, well, first of all, that was incredibly awkward to do. But that also will not allow you to get beautiful, consistent upstrokes. Instead, your upstroke should allow the pen to push on the page a little bit. How much? Just enough so that you can feel it in your fingertips. If you are barely touching the page, the only way you know you're touching is because your eyes are looking at the paper and you can see a line. So your upstrokes should be the size that your stroke takes. No, see, I don't even know if I'm on the paper. When your eyes are closed. Right now, I can feel I'm just touching the paper. Was I? Yes. Oh, thank goodness, that would have been so embarrassing otherwise. So close your eyes, take your pen, and start to move it up the page. When you can feel it on the paper, open, that's how thick your upstroke should be. Just because your eyes can see a thinner upstroke does not mean that's what you should be doing, because you won't have control, because you won't be able to feel what your pen is doing on the paper. And that is so important for having control over your pen. Now, knowing what size we should have, let's do a few upstrokes. But how do we make sure that we keep our speed and our stability there as well? Well, stability, thankfully, is also built into being able to feel the pen on the page. If you can feel it, then you have that physical response in your arm so that you know when you're pushing and how hard you're pushing. And for an upstroke, it's the smallest amount possible while still feeling your pen on the page. For your speed, you want to go incredibly slowly. The slower you go, the more control you have. You also don't want to extend your stroke so far that you're reaching out and it's starting to curve. If you're doing your strokes and you continue going and you see that curve, you're trying to push your upstroke past where it can go with your hand nicely stabilized on your page. Your upstroke needs to be shorter and only as tall as you can still keep it straight, stabilized on the page, slow, and under control. These two strokes, your downstroke and your upstroke, combine to give you the contrast between the two that makes your lettering gorgeous. Take these two strokes, practice them a lot. You're not going to have a strong foundation without lots of practice and without these fundamentals. And there's a reason that fun is in the beginning of fundamentals. It's a lie. It's not always the most fun to practice these things, but it will make your lettering later on a lot more fun, successful, and full of joy for you if you have a strong foundation. Practice downstrokes, practice upstrokes, and then practice alternating those strokes. I suggest filling an entire page with downstrokes, filling an entire page with upstrokes, and then filling an entire page with a downstroke and an upstroke and a downstroke and an upstroke. And in the end, it's actually an incredibly beautiful page. I can't wait to see how you put your fundamental basic strokes into practice. There will be more basic strokes coming up over the next little bit, so make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss a single one. Until next time, happy lettering.